Welcome everyone to our last panel of the day. I am personally thrilled for this one. I think that we've heard an amazing conversation from founders from CPG brands of how they've been growing their brands, getting into retail, how they started things. And this we've been calling internally the acceleration partner panel, because all three of the brilliant entrepreneurs that you see here are helping CPG brands accelerate the efforts that they're doing, but they're also founders and operators themselves. So Eleanor, Denise, Elijah are coming from kind of different sides of the CPG marketing ecosystem and supporting brands and creating their products. And you'll explain it way better than I ever will. So I want to hand it over to you, but a minute or two on, what's your backstory? What does your agency do? And how are you supporting CPG brands? Let's start with Eleanor.
Well, thanks. Hey, Sam. I'm Eleanor. I started Hayden Consultancy 2 years ago. Actually, my anniversary is coming up. But started my career out working in sales for PepsiCo, and then left to join Kodiak Cakes and build out the shopper marketing department there. And then had some fun times there and went over to Siete Foods and did the same thing. And then about 2 years ago, decided to branch off on my own and work with a lot of really amazing CPG brands, some of which actually are speaking at the events today. So that's been pretty fun to watch. But yeah, that's me now. So Denise, go ahead.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Denise Lambertson. I'm the founder and chairwoman of an agency called LMS, and we build celebrity and influencer partnerships for startup and growth stage CPG brands, not only CPG brands, but the majority of our clients today and historically have been healthy consumer products. And, it's been really fun to, when I think about how I started my agency about 13 years ago, before the term influencer really existed. And it was really about celebrity partnerships when I started it. And that was the gateway into CPG, but really quickly, when I started to build partnerships between celebrities and healthy products, back in 2011 and 12, there wasn't a lot of D2C, practically none, and there was no e-commerce. So really, we were focused a lot on retail, and it's been interesting to watch that move to e-commerce, D2C, and now how important retail is again. And I'm really excited to talk today about what it means to have, an influencer and marketing program and support brands as they grow at retail through that channel.
And Elijah?
Hey, everyone. My name is Elijah. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Modifly. We are a paid media agency focused on both in-store and online sales. We have worked with brands like Celsius, Poopery, Super Coffee, Beam CBD, General Mills, etc. And really, like, a lot of our clients just naturally have been beverage. One of the fastest growing segments. And so as we look at beverage on e-commerce, that's really where my company started. It's extremely difficult to do online just because of distribution costs specifically and fulfillment. And so everybody on my client, or a lot of my clients, were asking, like, how can you help us move things from online to in-store, and what's the correlation like? So I've been at Modifly and started it now about 6 years ago. And for the last four and almost 5 now, it's been a very, very big focus of ours is, okay, what's the correlation from paid media, such as Facebook, Instagram, et cetera, all the way down to in-store velocity in Walmart or Target or Kroger's, et cetera. And how do we correlate that? Very excited to be here as well, talk about the changing trends and just how we can use paid media to actually drive velocity as well.
Amazing. I'm actually excited to hear more from Denise and Elijah too. I guess I didn't really give much background on how I help brands and how I work. So I'll just jump right back in really quickly and share, because actually I do think the three of us will be very great friends after this. So I work with brands on their shopper marketing efforts. So any retail marketing that relates back to the retailer, mostly focus on retail media, like working directly with Walmart Connect and Target Roundel. But then the other kind of big portion of our business is managing sponsored search and running like on-site display on the retailer program. So Denise and Elijah, it sounds like we got a full 360 marketing team right here right now. So
Indeed.
cool.
Thank
And
you
it-
for elaborating on that, Eleanor.
Yeah.
It's such an important conversation, I think, the 360 aspect of it, because it's not like one thing that you're doing in your business is what's going to make you succeed at retail. Like you can't just do influencer or just do paid or just do shopper and expect to see these massive results. And what's cool about this conference is the people that are tuning in are at all levels of the ecosystem. They either are just starting their brand, maybe they've been doing D2C, they're just getting into retail, or they have wide scale distribution in retail. So I would love to hear from each of you, your perspective, because it's been changing so much. Like today, what does it look like to be a CPG brand that is selling in retail? Like, can you describe that landscape for people that are tuning in that may not know? Elijah, if you want to start.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, everything in our landscape is changing pretty much every week, if not more. And it has been for years, but really, I mean, everything that we all went through from March of 2020 until we really didn't like have an end date. It's just kind of ongoing at this point. Has just, I mean, it's accelerated things. It's slowed others down. I love the conversation right now on how D2C is dead and we should only be doing retail, or D2C is a distraction is what I hear, because I find that counterintuitive, because retail is actually quite more capital intensive than D2C, depending on the category, obviously. But I think really, like, when we look at just like the trends and the changes that we're seeing, it comes down to focus on brands, especially those who have been built, called for the last like 2 to 5 years, and they're predominantly D2C and Amazon. And now they're saying, we all need to get into retail. And so buyers have this just huge flood of people coming in right now, more than ever, especially within up and coming categories or newer types of categories that really haven't been developed as much. I think that's a big one, is like differentiation, and also thinking about price differentiation too. Consumers can only buy so much of the better for you, much higher price point comparison in that brand category. So I think it's a share of wallet is a big focus when it comes to trends. And then on top of that, just being more selective, I think, is something I'd like to see more on a trend for what partners brands are trying to get into. If you are a mid-premium price point, like going into Walmart may not be the best idea for you right now, because that just may not be where those consumers are. Or if you are a brand that's a volume-based company that's a lower price point, making sure that you actually get the distribution you need. So I think right now, really, it's a mix of the modeling that we look at, that it comes down to just price and making sure we're differentiating on shelf and online enough.
Yeah, I think to piggyback on some of that too, just like how different things have become, not only for shoppers and how they're shopping, especially since the pandemic, but retailers and brand behaviors as well. So I'm sure some of you guys have seen, like, retailers are kind of expecting more from slotting fees and vendor income and things like that. And so having a really strategic plan has been really important. As I work with brands, we've been able to kind of negotiate slotting fees at times with retailers to swap for vendor income. So we can at least say, hey, can we run some marketing behind it instead of just cutting a $50K check? So there's definitely some ways to try to be flexible. I'd say, like, that's kind of how we're trying to deal with some of these changes, because some of these programs are getting insane. I mean, Walmart Connect has like recently gotten pretty huge with building out their team. You can see like that's continuing to grow. Target Roundell's requirements have been pretty expensive for a long time. And we're seeing more of that with Albertsons and Kroger as they're developing their retail marketing teams as well. The other side of it too is, like, for shoppers, there are so many startups and lots of different apps and things that are popping up. So people are kind of like, which app do I download to get the best coupons and to get the this and that? And so it's been really interesting working with brands and being able to tell them kind of where we're seeing the most success. I think, shameless plug here, but I'm a huge fan of the Velocity product. It's something I talk about a ton to brands. It's like how I, met Sam and the team. I think Velocity helps kind of keep the process simple for people. They don't have to download an app. They don't have to like do all this extra work. So it's really like revolutionizing the way we've done, in the past, everything's like a paper coupon and like, sending things in the mail, and it's just like not realistic these days. So
Yeah, I completely agree and see both Eleanor and Elijah's points. And I would, the only thing that I can add really is to take the change from the other direction. I think that, what I see happening is, the D2C boom that happened during COVID, everything D2C, now there's this rush of those brands to want to go into retail, as Elijah mentioned, and it's almost like retailers have become influencers themselves. Like what retailer you are in says something about your brand, and it says something about your brand to the other retailers. It says something about your brand to the consumers, and the consumers care. Oh, wait, why aren't you in Whole Foods? Or, I saw that you're in Target, but why are you in Walmart? Right. So that's been a really interesting shift, something that I don't remember as like a pre-pandemic kind of determination that consumers were making. And now it really, and I think it has to do with a lot of these retailers investing in kind of brand marketing themselves to keep up with the Targets of the world who have, kind of built their business on the back of that. But, to Elijah's point about focus, I think, if you're a small business or an earlier business that's just making that transition for the first time, there's this feeling of, oh, I got to grow fast. I got to get in everywhere. I would, suggest being really focused and picking, one or two to the extent that you can, and winning those in a major way, and becoming a very attractive partner for others, and creating a little bit of a FOMO around the business instead of going too wide and too shallow.
I love that you said that. And I want to double click on the winning piece for a minute, of like winning that retailer when you pick the one or two. Like if we were to role play and say, okay, I'm a CPG brand, I did pick the right retailer and I want to double down and win that one. What are you going to recommend from a strategy perspective that I consider to do that? And obviously that differs by retailer. So if you want to pick one, for example, of like what you would recommend for that brand, it'd be really interesting, I think, to hear from your different perspectives, because you attack that problem from different angles. Like, what are you recommending to that brand? And maybe we'll start with Denise.
Sure. Well, influencer marketing by design is a real brand marketing play. It's not as focused and direct response-ish as what Elijah does, and certainly not as as trade-based as it sounds like what Eleanor does, right? So it really, and again, Eleanor said it best, shameless plug to Velocity. One of the biggest challenges up until the Velocity product is the ability to prove that influencer marketing at retail works, right? And we're living in a very, if you can't prove it, it doesn't exist world around marketing, which as a brand marketer is like a little bit heartbreaking, but I play in that world, and that's fine, and we do it. So when we are working with a brand that is working to win a very specific retailer, we spend a lot of time crafting a program that has influencers creating content in the store. It has a multi activation narrative around, identifying, educating on the product, finding it in the store, bringing it home, using it in some way. And it also, we spend a lot of time talking to our clients about how to then use that content in a targeted way and for paid. And then also we prep them for, to show the buyer and how to show the buyer, this is what I'm doing to support this relationship. This is how I'm investing in driving foot traffic into your store to buy my product so that you don't have to, and that, again, 4 or 5 years ago, I don't think buyers would have cared, noticed, or we were like educating them on for the first time why influencer was driving. Now it seems like it's expected. At least we're all talking the same language when we talk about influence. It's not like people are looking over their heads being like, what is this thing? You know, buyers seem to know that this is a viable marketing channel. And then with the Velocity product, now it's the ability to actually attribute, which has been, you know, so incredible and kind of the missing piece for influencer marketing at retail.
Thank you. Thoughts on paid, Elijah?
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that, I think something you said was really interesting, Denise, which is where to find, and not just what store, but where in store. That is, I mean, it's definitely not, we call it getting onto the grocery list or getting onto the, just like the reoccurring purchase list. Like that's the first challenge. Then the second one is, okay, before I can get it into my cart at the store, I have to know where it is. And a lot of the brands that have come out in the last 5 years, they are not big products. They are tiny. I mean, they are a can or a 4-pack of something, or typically smaller than that. Maybe some of them are taller, but just on just like square footage perspective, it's really, really small products. And so when you walk through, let's just say that this retailer is Sprouts, just to keep it easy. So natural, couple hundred doors, usually higher income buyer. That's a great testing ground for a lot of these better for you new brands. You have a consumer who's looking for new products because they're really focused on their health. You have a bit more disposable income because of location. And if the velocity and sell-through is there to match buyer expectation, it's exactly what Denise said, which is use the data that you have to build out case studies. For paid media, it's a lot of people will just say, okay, we're going to go and geofence these areas and run some UGC on like, here's what it is, where to find it, what logo, what retailer logo, and where it is in store. That works sometimes. It's not a perfect science by any means, which absolutely Advisor helps close that gap. Because I mean, you run it to 10,000 people and then 2 people buy it, you're not going to see that incremental lift on POS data, if you're even getting that yet. And so it's like that's a big portion of it. But then secondarily to that is when you look at the where to buy equation and where to find in store, that's actually the biggest challenge, because just like D2C, consumers only have so much attention span, and they're not going to go walk around Sprouts for 10 minutes looking for you. Most generalizing, they won't. If you tell them we're in this aisle next to these products, it really helps close that gap. That's what we find. And for paid, I mean, like I said, we can all go and run geofenced ads in that, but what we find usually works best is actually something a bit more creative. So for an example, we're a little below expectations for a brand of ours in key regions in Walmart for poopery. And it was a new product. Nobody had really heard about it yet. It was their home product, not the bathroom one. And they were like, okay, how do we really need to sell this? It's been 3 months in market and it's doing half of the goal. So we called it the golden poop, just like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Because to open the product and use the product, you had to unwrap it from a box and the cap too. The bottom of the cap, you couldn't open it in store. If you did, like, it's essentially the same thing as stealing, because you're completely destroying the product to open. If you open the cap to fill it with the product, if it was golden, you won one of our 3 prizes. And the prizes could range from $5,000 in cash, all expenses paid, trip to Maui, or different things like that. We started running that campaign, just geo-targeted ads, calling it the golden poop. And all of a sudden, 2-3 weeks in, retail sales had tripled. And then over time, it was just like week over week, consistent increases. And then eventually people won and it stopped, but we drove trial. And that was the whole point of it, was to drive trial, because once you use it, it's like if you spray Febreze in your house, and if you've ever sprayed it above you, you're ducking because you don't know what's in it. It's toxic. With this one, some of the UGC creators decided to literally eat it. Don't do that, please, if you buy it. Like spray it in their mouth like breath spray. And they're like, it's that natural. And it just got a ton of attention and worked really well. So, I mean, for paid media, it's really not just about the tactics of running it and how to running it. It's really about how do you get attention to drive trial for the first time.
I'm going to connect you with the Good Wipes team. I'm sure there's a collab there.
There are clients. Something coming between those two. We'll see.
Perfect. And Eleanor, how do you win shopper?
Yeah, so I think as a brand is going into a new retailer, we like to start with, I'm gonna bring us back to like marketing 101 from college, but you have like the marketing funnel, and most of what I do in Shopper is at the very bottom of the funnel. So like the very, very bottom is, you know, what your sales team is doing with promo planning and TPRs and maybe target circle offers. But then what I'm going to next is kind of like talking through, you know, sponsored search and how can we win online. I know, Elijah, you were talking about how like these tiny products, like we can't, how do we get like people's eyes on them on shelf? And that's what I love so much about how much our shopping experience has evolved over the last few years. People are shopping online so much more for their groceries that, you know, hopping on an Instacart or Kroger Click List or whatever it is that you're shopping from, really levels out the playing field for small brands to be able to compete with like the Pepsis and General Mills of the world. So I think, you know, if you have a strong strategy for shopper market, or sorry, for sponsored search and like the shoppable display ads and all these different products that these retailers are starting to come out with, it's really where I think brands are getting the most bang for their buck as they're entering retail. The nice thing about it too, that we have access to so much more information, so we can actually see attribution, revenue generated from these, you know, all of these clicks and adds to cart. And then from there, we can calculate profitability and sales lift and all these wonderful things that CEOs love to hear about their brands and how they're doing at retail. So it's really fun, you know, getting to work with a lot of different consumer brands on, you know, how do we help them kind of organize their strategy. I've had brands come to me be like, I don't think Target Criteo really works. And I'm like, just wait. Or, you know, feeling like maybe KPM isn't for them or whatever. I think like if you're feeling any of those feelings, it's time to kind of consider a different strategy. But, you know, I think like as we work our way up the funnel and then we start to bring in these additional components, like what Denise is doing with influencer and what Elijah is doing with paid media, you really will have like, that's kind of what I was talking about at the beginning with that full 360 plan. So like, how are you getting to the shopper throughout every component of their journey? So when they're sitting at home on their phones, flipping through their Instagrams and trying to decide what they're going to add to their grocery list. And then, yeah, like how do you stay on the grocery list? And then in my case, you know, I'm like, how do I get on that buy it again carousel every single week that people are just always adding to cart? So I think like, as you're thinking about specific retailers, it's really important to look at, you know, some retailer and retail media programs offer similar tactics, but some perform stronger than others, right? Like Kroger has an incredible mailer program, which I would have never guessed. Like something that goes in the mail is something that could be so effective for brands, but because they have such strong data, they can get away with a paper coupon in the mail. But I wouldn't say that every retailer has that same kind of performance. So understanding and knowing which tactics are going to get you the most bang for your buck by a retailer is also what's going to be really helpful for brands in making sure that, you know, they're optimizing their shopper marketing budgets as much as they can. So.
Awesome. That was all great. Thank you. And I think what it shows is you touched on the strategy piece a few times. The three of you have been doing this for, you know, a decade, respectively in your different industries. And it's clear that expertise as you speak to it. And I know like personally, I've probably gotten my CPG masterclass on phone calls and video calls with you. But when a brand, and Eleanor, I know you were in-house prior to starting your agency, when a brand is looking at their strategy and when it's time to bring on outside resources versus when it's time to set up a department in-house, like how do you think about that equation and what's the right timing and what should brands be looking for when they're making that call?
That's such a good question. We do get that a fair amount too. I think it, at least like in my world, we actually just launched at Hayden Consultancy a new program where we're offering services to even smaller brands who maybe only have 1 to 3 retailers in distribution, that we could focus on just giving them support on sponsored search management and strategy. I think I hate that they sometimes can get stuck with either figure it out yourself or use an AI, because a lot of the AI is just not ready for things like Instacart yet. Not that they're not effective. I think like, you know, it's definitely a great solution if you don't have anybody else managing your sponsored search programs, but there's quite a bit of error that comes through. And so yeah, we launched this new program where we help out brands specifically with sponsored search programs. And that's kind of more a la carte, but then you have the other side, which is like our full service side of the business. And I think like on that front is when I tell brands like, hey, once you're in, you know, you've like hit all your naturals and you've gotten into like your first 1 or 2 national retailers, call it like a Kroger or a Target, is when I think it's time to give Hayden Consultancy a call and we can help you out. Or and the other thing too is, you know, I love working with brands on education as well. So if you have someone in-house that's really interested in shopper marketing, that wants to like learn more and how do we kind of expand, we help a lot with that as well. So I think it just kind of depends on where you're standing with that. I know it's like definitely a newer concept with shopper and bringing that in-house, but yeah.
Yeah, you know, this is such a tough one, and I echo what Eleanor says. It's a really hard question to answer, and you know, from the lens of influencer marketing, brand marketing, as it relates to retail, but also just in general as it relates to CPG brands at, you know, kind of every life stage. And I'm interested to hear, Elijah and Eleanor, if this is the same in your part of the industry, but it seems, you know, my suggestion to brands is that whether they have somebody in-house or they hire somebody out, you know, a freelancer, a consultant, an agency, highly depends on the skill set and acumen of the person potentially in-house, right? But outside of that, even if you have somebody that's incredible, the rate of change right now is so fast, and having a advisor with you know, a special acumen towards this skill set that is in a position like, you know, one of the 3 of us that is working with multiple brands that can like spot something on one client and be like, oh my gosh, okay, this is where it's going. Hey, you guys got to, you know, because when you are in-house, and I'm saying this, you know, from a fairly ignorant place, because I've never worked in-house. Hasn't been but my experience looking in is that you know, you're growing and you're very, very focused and you're a little bit in an echo chamber and just like doing what's working and all the 900 other things that you need to do to make a business work, right? And it's really helpful, even if you're the executor of the influencer marketing program or, you know, the social media, to have somebody on the outside that, you know, is still involved and cares and is incentivized to say, hey, over here, this is happening, like jump on this now, and you can't see it because you're too much focused on the immediate tasks in front of you. So, you know, that really is, you know, it's dependent on, as I said, like the skill set of the team in-house is dependent on the life stage of the business, it's dependent on the category, it's dependent on the distribution. There's like so many variables that go into what makes that decision. But irrespective of all of that, you know, it's important that you have somebody there to check your blind spots.
Yeah. And I mean, what you just said is exactly what I would say too, where it's all about perspective. And when you're in-house, like there's a lot of additional perspective that outside vendors don't have. And there's everyone's like, oh, if I was at a brand on the agency side, I hear this all the time. It's like, if I was just in one brand, it would be so much easier. And I'm like, no, you don't realize that they're 90% of what goes into their day. You've never been in their shoes. But I think having outside perspective, whether it's agency, advisory groups, whatever that is, like I think companies, especially a lot of those who have raised recently, have done a really great job by building founder angel lists, or founder-led angel lists. So companies who have, I don't know, call it a 250 grand on an angel list or some kind of an SPV, right? And all of a sudden you have this group of people who are invested into your company that are also now advisors to you because they have skin in the game. And so companies who have done that, I think, have done a really, really great job of building up, I call it the sounding board of just people that's like, okay, I have all these specialists now that have skin in the game with me on my company. I can go to them. I know I can trust them because why would they lead me down the wrong way? I think that's a really great tactic. But also, like right now, specifically, depending on the topic, everything is moving so quickly and has been and evolving constantly, especially faster over the last 3 years. I really think that there's some things that can do really well in-house, and then there's some things that in my opinion, like you can't hire one person for paid media that can do every single platform under the sun. That's just not possible. If you find that person, like they are diamond in the rough, but most people know 1, 2, 3 max. They don't know how to run TV, broadcast, social, everything else in between, let alone shopper on top of it or influencer on top of it. It's like you're never going to find that person. So I think it's really just finding like the most important channels to your business, understanding what kind of a control system and incentive structure can I build for either outside vendors or internal to ensure that everyone's aligned to the same, we're all working towards the same goal and really moving in the same way and just kind of like walking hand in hand type thing.
Awesome. Awesome answers. Because it was kind of a trick question, right? Like you can't just answer that one way or the other, but it's a formula. And I think talking through how you think about it, because you each thought about it a little bit differently, is going to trigger for people things to think about in their own organization. Like, oh, where did that click? Where did that click? Yeah. I could ask you questions quite literally all day, but our audience has submitted some. So we're going to shift over to the audience Q&A for the rest of the call here. If you have questions, keep putting them in the chat and I'll be sure to ask them as they come up. But the first one we have is, what changes do you see happening in the CPG industry in the next 5 to 10 years? And how do you plan to adapt to stay competitive? Big length of time. What do you guys think?
Next 5 to 10 years and stay competitive. I mean, that's a great one. People will only accept so many new products. People don't like change. That's once again, huge generalization, but there's only so many consumers out there that will constantly be looking for new things. So I think it comes down to, there's a lot of main categories that now have a lot of subcategories under them, such as beverage. When you look at Olipop and then Poppy, and that was against soda and gut health combination. And then now you're seeing subcategories of those products, such as adaptogens from like Perfy and others. So when I think you see that, it's like, okay, one, I think we're getting to a point of saturation where there's not much white space, if any. And it's like investing into the brand to be around in the next 5 or 10 years, I think is the biggest thing. And then to stay competitive, it's really be product focused first. Like you can be amazing at marketing. You could be the best marketer that's ever existed. You could sell any product to anybody, but if your product sucks, no one's going to buy it again. And that retention, the companies that have the best retention, because somebody feels like they either one just enjoyed it so much and they just don't ever want to not have it again, or they just can't see their life without it type thing. Like those are the companies that are going to win long term. And I think over the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to find a consumer base become much more convenient driven. I mean, you have big retailers right now closing doors very, very quietly, like physical doors. And I think if you're not prioritizing things like Shopper and you're not prioritizing Marketplace, such as Instacart, I consider it is Shopper, but I consider it Marketplace because you have every single retailer pretty much there. Like, as you look at that, if you're not doing that now, like that, you're going to fall behind.
Yeah, I don't know if I could say what I think is going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years, but what I can say is that what's going to be so integral for brands is going to be making sure we're staying super close to like having the best people. Like, who are the best partners that you can trust that are going to be keeping their ear to the ground, making sure they know what's coming up next. Are they scrappy? Are they coming up with kind of different ways to get into certain programs, or are they like working directly with retailers to encourage, I've had some times where I've worked directly with retailers to help them with pricing on certain programs, because I'm like, whoa, that is astronomically more expensive than any other retailer. If you want to be able to sell this, like, let's work through this together, which is beneficial, of course, to the retailer, but also to all the wonderful brands I work with, right? So like, how do we kind of make sure that the people you're working with still have your best interest in mind and are going to stay close to what's new and happening? Because yeah, it is tough to say. I mean, I know that like the pandemic, I love grocery shopping, but the pandemic turned me into a person that I order all my groceries online now, even though it's something I love to do. But at the end of the day, I'm like, I got a kid at home and like, there's a lot of things going on. So who knows how your kind of behaviors will change over time.
My prediction, and this is not necessarily specific to retail, though it definitely encompasses retail, but certainly for CPG, and this might feel a little bit obvious to everyone on this call, but it needs to be said anyway. Like, AI is inevitable. It is coming for every single part of our lives, our business. Just like all new technologies, compliance will come later. And so, my prediction is that, for the next 5 years of CPG is that those that acknowledge that and embrace that and incorporate it are going to be the winners, and those that resist, they're going to really suffer just by the, sheer volume of new products and new businesses, and the, as of right now, real lack of capital that's out there. This is one way to start optimizing and being more efficient towards the kind of lean startup. I think that the most important hire that doesn't even really exist yet is going to be some sort of like, AI generalist that will be constantly evaluating opportunities for businesses and understanding it and educating the rest of the team about how best to use it. So, that's like one, and how I feel about that morally and ethically is like totally separate from the fact that I believe it's an inevitability. And then the other thing that I believe is really here to stay and just going to get bigger is, this celebrity and creator founded brands having this kind of unfair advantage from day one, and continuing to I think we will be hard pressed to walk down an aisle of Whole Foods or Target in the next 2 years without seeing almost 80% of the brands having some founder celebrity or founder marketing or influencer or creator at the helm, not just an investor, not just an equity holder. It's really, I think that is I think Logan Paul and Mr. Beast have proven that, and it just takes a few and then the rest will follow.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the as seen on TV section of Walmart and others. I mean, we're already seeing TikTok finds, Pinterest DIY. Those are up and coming categories right now in those stores. And I think like celebrity backed brands is going to be widely adopted as potentially a section of an aisle, if not an aisle itself eventually too.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit more, just for people that may not be familiar, what those are, those aisles you're referencing?
Oh, so just specifically Walmart. I mean, I've seen it everywhere from like CVS to Walgreens, etc. But in the 80s and 90s, there's a huge rush of companies driving infomercials. One of them is called Bulbhead. They were like the hose that grows when you turn the water on, and a bunch of other stuff. And they created a section at Walmart called As Seen on TV. So it's the like big red logo that says As Seen on TV, and it's a whole aisle of just gadgets and house optimization products that make life easier for people. And they're breaking that section up and adding stuff next to it. So they have like As Seen on Social, they have As Seen on TV, in As Seen on Social, they have like influencer favorites now. They have TikTok finds, Pinterest DIY, things like that. So, I mean, it's just like those viral products. I mean, we've all seen like the stars that light up in the room from the little thing, like stuff like that. So I mean, that's becoming more and more of a focus I've seen, just because it's a very high foot traffic section of Walmart. And I eventually could easily, I mean, I'm sure it's already there. I just haven't maybe seen it, but like celebrity brands, celebrity endorsed brands. Like I'm pretty sure I have seen something. I don't know where though, but it's like that's just inevitable at this point. There's so many of them. And it's like people will buy or at least look at those types of products because there's celebrities behind them. So there's a very quick trust and awareness factor to most of them, depending on the celebrity.
Awesome. And I think, so our next question, you guys kind of touched on it a little bit with AI and celebrity creator-led brands and these placements via social, but you're all advisors. You're all, I think, on the investment side of the table as well. So you're looking at these brands from a variety of different perspectives. And I'm curious what you think, it's here written, but what you think is a competitive advantage, or like the competitive advantage that brands should be optimizing for in the next 5 years that are really trying to win retail?
Oh, that's a good one.
A really good one.
Not going to go first on that one. I'm going to yield to one of you guys and think about that a little more.
Competitive.
Are you saying the questions are visible to, this is like a Zoom noob question, but
I have the question sent to me and I'm reading it to you.
okay. Because I opened the Q&A and I'm like, I'm seeing something different. Okay. Sorry.
So I mean, competitive advantage for a brand, I think is a few things. So one is a very definitive understanding of the category. Sam, you brought it up earlier, Good Wipes. They had an open round right now, and I did that one, and it was the biggest reason I did that is because one, their team is amazing, but they know so much about that category. It's a wet wipe, and seeing that's like it's growing so quickly and knowing exactly who they're for on a segmentation perspective. Like, to me, that's a big thing that I think a lot of brands just kind of like throw generalized info around and don't really go deep enough into who they're for. And then the second thing is also just, I think it's a big competitive advantage to me is like a very, very clear, it is kind of basic, but it's like a very clear competitive differentiation. Like, you don't always have to be different by any means, but at the same time, like, it's so much simpler to grow as a company if it's like something is already, like, there's companies that already exist and we're not like rebuilding the wheel by any means, but we're just making it shinier and making it easier for someone. We're making it cheaper and better or healthier. Like, that's been a huge focus, but it's like actually having the research to support that, I think, is a really big competitive advantage. And I've seen a lot of retailers recently. It's like, well, we already have this energy product. Why is someone going to buy this instead? And then they have to go back and do that research. And then they're kind of piecing it together. So I think really like getting the upfront work in regards to just like, why do you exist as a company and like, what are you doing? And being very robust about that is a big piece that not enough have done yet.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is also like when you talk to founders or kind of like the C-suite of the brands that you're working with. And like, of course, I think I've like mentioned already, like I'm huge on people and making sure that the people you feel like you're connecting with and it makes sense and that you believe in their mission. But I think the way they're strategizing and talking about their brand, to me, I'm like, the more clear someone is with me, like the less like fluff I feel like I'm trying to separate in between their words, the more trustworthy, right? Because you're like, okay, you're pretty direct with what you're going for. You have this business, this is where you see it going, this is why you think your product is different and why it'll be successful. And I think like being able to see that kind of confidence coming from the founder, especially as someone who clearly has spent, so much time researching the category and understanding how their product fits and what makes, what's going to kind of like make them really stick out in the end of the day is, I think, what is so important. And then like, secondly, from there, again, I'm a marketing person, but I'm also a numbers person. And so like being able to like dig in and look at, I'm like, I'd love to see what your current shopper marketing budget looks like and where does that stand, and understanding how they justify certain spends, I think also is really helpful in feeling, more confident in that brand. So.
Okay, I think I formulated my answer here. It took me a minute. Thanks for going first, guys. Coming out of the D2C craze, I feel like there was a moment in time where it was the meta ads were just working so well. This is like pre-14, right? Where like it was less about the product and more about, less about the founder, less about the passion, less about the purpose, the unmet need, and more about like, oh, data tells me I can sell this and I know how to get it in front of the right customers and, optimize this and let me hack this into a business. And now that that's over, and it really is over for anyone, that's listening that thinks that we might be holding on, but like, no, that's a wrap on that model. I believe, and I think this is a little bit of what both of you were saying, like the importance of brand and knowing who you are and being able to articulate your product and your reason for being is once again going to be incredibly, it's going to be paramount, and it's going to be slightly controversial because it feels so different than what we just came from, where we can't always attribute every single thing, every single sale and every single PR hit, and all of that, right? And I guess to best articulate this, the example I always give is Vital Proteins, and the hundreds of other collagen, which I think I'm a believer in collagen because I read that it works, but like I take it, I don't know, is my hair shinier or my nails tougher? Like who knows? But I believe, right? But like why? You open the tubs, it's all white powder. Like how do I know one works better than the other? I don't. But Vital Proteins, against every other brand that was out there, just out marketed and like knew who they were, went after their customer, and really built a community, which I think is also another big trend that's coming in marketing. And like at the end of the day, they sold to Nestle Health before anyone else, and at a really, really ridiculous multiple. And I really think the major differentiation, if everything else is equal, the powder in the tin, like it's because they built a better brand. And I do think that is the future again.
Just to add to that, I think it's because they built a better brand, yes, but I think they built a better reason to believe. They built a product and they built a message and a marketing mix that gave people a reason to believe, and credibility with who they paired behind it on the celebrity factor. And then they also had the distribution to back it up. So it really came down to trust. Like if you just compare people, too many people are like, oh, brand doesn't matter now. And it's like, sure, if you want to talk about like visual identity and design, like as long as you're recognizable to some degree and people can read you and your colors don't completely dissuade individuals or whatever. But like brand is like, when I hear people say brand doesn't matter, I'm like, that's the most incorrect statement I've ever heard in my entire life. They care about the product, yes, but why do they come back is because the product has high efficacy, it tastes good, it looks good, and a big factor of that is that they trust you, which trust is built by brand. So like that's something that I think not enough people are prioritizing right now. That doesn't mean go run awareness campaigns on Facebook. That's not going to do anything for your brand. But it's really just an under talked about thing right now because people just don't know. It's a really dense conversation right now.
I mean, they also had a pretty big feat of education too. Like they needed to teach people how to use that product. And Denise, I'm sure you loved like how they did that with influencer marketing. It's like the little, what is that, like foamy thing that you
hand blender?
Yeah, the little blender thing, and mixing it with your matcha like became such a thing.
Yeah. And I'll say, at LMS, we worked with one of their competitors. So this is why, like, I backed a different horse, and this is why I paid so much attention, because, I saw how what an uphill battle it was trying to trail that, when the business already had such a strong, identity. And I do think, as hard as this is to hear for people, for brands that are like starting out where, and being a startup is so hard, but like truly at this moment in time, it's never been faster, easier, or like cheaper essentially to bring a knockoff to market, like ever in history. Right. And so if you're onto something good and that you're going to have, like sharks kind of at your heel, like the only thing you have is brand. I mean, team for sure, but like team builds into that brand and that community. And so it's really hard to know what to invest in when, to Elijah's point, like don't go, and it's good to have advisors around and people, those that have been through this, and you're going to have to make hard decisions with those dollars because it's scary to spend when you don't know exactly what's going to come back immediately. But I do really believe that, especially with the younger consumer that's coming, they have so many options. They've always had so many options since the day they were born. And so that the connectivity, the community, the values, all of those things really, really matter.
Great answers. I'm glad that we got that question in time. Unfortunately, we are out of time. So we're coming to the end here of Velocity Day 1. Connect with Elijah, Eleanor, and Denise on LinkedIn. They all have great profiles, would love to chat with you. And tomorrow we're doing a whole other day of panels. So we have founders in the morning. We're talking to retailers midday. So we have Kroger, Erewhon, and Jimbo's coming. And then we're going to close it out with a panel on founders who have started companies, exited companies, and now run companies. So should be a great day tomorrow. Thank you everyone for coming. And thank you so much to the three of you. This was an amazing way to close out day 1.